Hello everybody, my name is Zen and welcome back to more of our player guide series where we're on our second episode. In the previous episode we talked about the business model of Star Wars, and that's very important because it touches many other aspects of the game, so it's important to know kind of what is going on there. However, in today's episode we're going to be talking about character creation, and that seems kind of strange because you wouldn't think like, oh, I need a guide on how to create a character. That's not something you usually think, especially when you're playing any kind of RPG. However, it's a strange case, and once you learn these things I'm about to teach you, you'll be able to take these into any other game that you may create a character in, and you may end up actually enjoying your characters a lot more. Once you begin to like your character, you'll end up playing the game more, and once you end up playing the game more, it'll kind of like snowball effect, and you'll like your character more, and then you'll play the game more, and it's just one of these things that you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of various games that you'll play. So this may be specific to Star Wars for the rest of the guide, but you'll get a lot of concepts out of here that you could drag in to other RPGs, like I said. So there's a few different things when creating a character that you're going to want to look for. So in Star Wars specifically, you have your class, your race, and the most important bit to creating a character is your story. And that may sound strange to some of you, but we'll get to that. So we're going to start with class, right? There's several classes in the game. So there are 8 classes total. There's 4 on the Republic and 4 on the Empire, which are the 2 different factions that you typically see in Star Wars games. And each of those classes mirror each other. So you have the Bounty Hunter, the Agent, the Inquisitor, and the Warrior on the Empire. But on the Republic, you have the Trooper, the Smuggler, the Consular, and the Jedi-knight. Now, what I mean by mirroring is that the Bounty Hunter and the Trooper are both similar classes. They both work the same way, but they have different looks, they have different stories, they have different abilities. The abilities work very similar to each other, and you'll notice when you play one, you'll understand the other when you go into it. And there's also different spell effects for each one, so they feel like separate classes, even though they are very much very similar. The Agent mirrors the Smuggler, the Inquisitor mirrors the Consular, and the Warrior mirrors the Knight. Now, this is important to know, but I will end up talking a lot more about classes in the next guide. Now, there is a lot of information as far as classes go that we have to talk about. However, we won't be doing that in this video. We'll be doing it in the next video when I go like uber detailed into it. What you do need to know is just that what I would suggest is to play through every class at least once and just kind of figure out what class you like the most. Story's going to have a big aspect and effect with that, but don't get into the habit that most people do, which is you level a character to level 10 and then you forget about him, and you start a new character and you get to level 10 and then you forget about him and you start a new character. It's a really vicious cycle because you actually never end up leveling a character. You never end up enjoying the best parts of the story because you never get far enough to do so. So we'll talk about a little bit how to avoid that when we get to our story bit. Now, what we need to talk about right now that you kind of know that there's 4 classes on each faction, and to kind of choose a class, you can read about a lot of them in the descriptions that they have, but what we need to talk about now is the different races, because this ties into the story bit. So you have several different races to choose from here. You have the standard human, which is available to everybody regardless if you're free to play or not. You can play everything as a human. Then you have the Sith pureblood. That is a bit more evil, and they have tentacles on their face. You have the cyborg, which is just like the human, except it's got implants and different various customization options there. You have the Zabrak, which most people know what they are if you've seen the movies. You have your typical red Zabrak, which is usually found on the Empire, then your brown skin Zabrak, which is usually found on the Republic, although they do cross back and forth sometimes. And then you have the Chiss. They have a huge amount of lore behind them, and they're very cool. If you've never heard about them, you may have if you've played any of the Knights of the Old Republic games. Then you have the Cathar. I mean, if you're into furries, that's cool. Some Cathar look really cool. Others look ridiculous. You have the Mirialan, which are one of my favorite. They have cool tattoos on their faces, which symbolize different accomplishments in their life, and they're green-skinned, which is a little weird, but they're cool. You have the Ratataki, kind of a tribal nation of people. They also have pretty cool backstory to them, but they're usually more aggressive. You have the Twi'lek, which a lot of people know about. I mean, if you've seen the movies, you know what a Twi'lek is. You have the Miraluka, which is the last one, and the Miraluka are blind, and they're usually very force sensitive, but you typically only find them on the Republic. Now, here's the twist. With a system in the game called the Legacy system, which we'll talk about in detail in a different video, all of these can be unlocked. So if you leveled a character to 50 as a Sith pureblood, say you had the ability to play a Sith pureblood, played it as a warrior, you leveled it to 50, it then unlocks it for every single one of the other classes. So you could play a Jedi-knight as a Sith pureblood, which is pretty cool that it unlocks it that way. And I mean, the only real one that you want to watch out for is the Cathar. It's unlocked through the cartel market. You can't really unlock it any other way. I mean, you could buy it, I think, with credits from the GTN if someone bought it and put it up there, and that's a way of doing that, and we talked a little bit about that in the business model episode. What you're looking for here is a race of people that you like. Sometimes you won't be able to play it with a certain class because it hasn't been unlocked yet. You can unlock it with cartel coins usually, so that's another option there if you're really into a class. Like if you're really into a Miraluka agent, and be like a blind sniper. Like, I think that's a really cool idea, and that is an option for your character creation. So just kind of keep in mind when you're going through these, figure out which one you like the most. It may take a lot of playing with the editor, because as you can probably see, you have a lot of options with creating the different characters, and each one of these races comes with a very specific racial ability. They're all fairly standard. The only ones that really stand out to me are the Miraluka. They can sense alignment, and we'll talk about that in a second, but they can sense whether someone's good or evil based on the decisions they've made in the game. And the other one is that the Mirialan have like a special rest ability to regain their health and stuff that is fairly cool. But moving on from there, you have your typical male and females, and then each male and female for each different class is voice acted by a different person, which I think it gives your characters a lot more life. But like I said, we'll get into the story bit once we kind of figure out what the different additional customizations are. You can get these customizations from the cartel market, different hairstyles, different tattoos for your Mirialan and stuff like that. Not super important, but they are available if you really like one. Like if you can have white eyes as a human, if you want to. But like I said, all of that's unlocked through the cartel market. And if you're a new player and you haven't even made a character yet, don't even bother yet. Just go make a human and make the best human you can if you want to. So there's one more aspect in creating a character that you have to keep in mind, is the game is a typical BioWare RPG, which means you have a lot of choices to make. If you've ever played Mass Effect or Dragon Age, Jade Empire, any of their really good RPGs, you would know that there's choices in those games, and your choices affect the end of the story, and actually affect a lot of the different things that happen in the story. So you gotta know that there are a set of light-sided choices and a set of dark-sided choices you can make. Most of the time, you'll be asked to make one or the other. You can remain neutral, so you can do that. What I usually do now, I originally played a light-sided character, just pure light-sided, and I started doing that kind of thing, and then it just wasn't fun to me. So what I've started doing now is playing a character kind of neutral. Like I make a light-sided or dark-sided choice based on what my character themselves would make. And this brings us to the story aspect of creating a character. And most people, when I said role-playing, would automatically think Dungeons & Dragons and then automatically shut off this video. So I don't want you to do that. But I am going to say role-playing here. So you do have to kind of come up with a story for your character, and it's kind of this misconception that role-playing is uber geeky, and a lot of people have really self-conscious feelings about that, and I understand it, but just get over it, because we're gonna have fun here. So off the top of my head, I'm gonna tell you kind of what I mean. Now, when I say I want you to create a story for your character. It doesn't mean like I want you to, come up with a book and you got to write that book out, and I want an entire fleshed out history of their lineage and stuff. Like I don't need that. What I just want you to do is be creative when you're at this point in creating your character. Just come up with something. Why is your character in the universe? Why do they exist? What aspect makes them unique? What aspect makes them an asset in the universe of Star Wars in this case? So you could come up with anything, and like I said, just off the top of my head, I'm going to come up with, say you make a consular, a Jedi consular, and say the family of your consular have all been Jedi, and you know that you're coming into the story when you first make a character, that character comes in and is becoming a Jedi. You're joining the Jedi Order, you're going through the training and stuff, and that's what's happening in the story for the consular when you join the game. So what happens before that? Well, make it up. Make up a backstory. Your family all were Jedi. It's expected of your character to join the Jedi Order, even though they don't want to, and there's a little bit of a friction there, so some of the choices they make may not necessarily all be light-sided. They may not necessarily agree with a lot of the Jedi stuff, and they really wanted to become a baker. That's a thing. So suddenly you have a backstory for your character. What does the backstory do? It gives your character motivation. What does the motivation do? It changes the way your character responds in conversations, which completely changes the way that you play this game, and it makes it just so much more fun. Most of you who've been around the channel for a while know I do this with my class playthroughs. I come up with a story, and it's really good, and you guys really like that, and a lot of you have really started to cling to that and started to do that very thing for yourself. And it's really important you do it, because once you have a story for your character, whether it's super easy and simple, or whether it is something incredibly complex, it is going to change the way that you see your character. Once you do that, as I said at the beginning of the video, you'll like your character more. If you like your character more, you'll enjoy the game more. Character creation is one of the most underrated but most important aspects of any RPG out there. In fact, it doesn't even have to be an RPG. You can play Grand Theft Auto and make a character and have a backstory for him that ties in with the main story of the game. It could be done, and it can completely change the way that you end up playing. So really, I can't stress it enough. Get past any self-conscious thing that you have with the term role-playing, because it doesn't mean anything. All it really means is that you're coming up with a story. You're getting creative. Do that, even if you're not a good storyteller. Just do it. Just do some story, and I guarantee you'll like it a lot more. Because as I was talking about earlier, the legacy system that ties into most of the game's systems has a feature in it that I really enjoy. A lot of people don't use it. I really enjoy. It allows you to create a family tree, so you can take different characters of yours, throw them in there, and make them oh, this guy was an ally of this guy, and this guy was the sibling of this chick, and she was also an enemy of this person, and you can have this really awesome legacy tree that kind of fleshes out all the different choices that your characters will make in the game. And like I said, you'll enjoy it a lot more. But the very last thing we have to talk about as far as character creation goes is probably something that we could have gotten out of the way to begin with, but I wanted to get to the meat of the conversation first. So we're going to talk about the server types. You have your typical PvE server. PvE means player versus environment server. It doesn't mean that you can't PvP, which is player versus player. It just means that while you're out in the world, when you're playing, you won't be attacked by random other players, by random faction players of, the Republic if you're playing on the Empire, or vice versa. What it means is that, you can then quest freely and not have to worry about being totally killed by, the different factions. Alternatively, on a PvP server, that can happen, and it can spice up leveling a bit. So you kind of got to decide what you want to play. Personally, I play on PvE servers. It's just a bit more friendly, in my opinion, but there can be a lot of fun had on PvP servers. The last kind of server is a role-playing server. A lot of that story aspect I was talking about gets taken to a whole new level, and they do a very good job of it, and you get to kind of take that story and really play it through your character while you're playing the game to other players, and it's kind of cool. There's also role-playing PvP, which, you could pretty much figure out what that is. However, that is all that I wanted to talk about with character creation. If you have any really cool stories that you've made up for your characters, or if you have any questions of anything we've talked about in this video, leave them in the comments below and we'll get to them as quickly as possible. And I really do want to hear your character stories because I think it's one of the more fascinating parts about playing an RPG, especially an MMO, because you can really do some cool things there. But on that note, we will be back with more of these guides as we get more in depth with kind of learning how to play the game at a high advanced level. And we shall see you guys next time.